Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to The Law. My name is Joseph Akable. Today on The Law, we are finding justice for abused children. Under Ghana's Children's Act, specifically 1998 Act 560, a person below the age of 18 is considered to be a child. This piece of legislation, together with the various constitutional provisions, guarantees rights for children. Some of these rights include the right to name and nationality, the right to grow up with parents, the right to parental properties, right to education and well-being, among others. Despite the existence of these rights, there are still major concerns with regards to the rights of these children being abused and having instances where no action is taken for such abuse. Today on The Law, we'll hear the perspective of a lawyer. We'll also hear the perspective of someone who works within the space that seeks to protect such children. My name is Joseph Akable, but first, we bring you a bit of a clip that indicates some of the stories that our reporters have told about child abuse in different parts of the country. We'll be right back.
Junior's body depicts a prisoner of war tortured in a concentration camp. As little as he is, Junior is able to narrate what happened to him.
I received a call inviting me to this hospital, and upon arrival, I was introduced to this little girl who I readily identified. She is my junior sister's daughter, living with her father in one of the villages outside Wale. I asked her what is wrong with her, and she showed me her hand. I asked her what happened to her hand, and she said her father set it on fire and burned it. I asked her what crime she has committed to warrant this barbaric punishment by her father. Then she said she was wrongfully accused of stealing 10 Ghana cedis from her grandmother. The man first assaulted the child with a stick, leading to injuries to her eye before putting her hand into the fire.
We are here at the recovery ward at the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, where Isaac, the 5-year-old boy, got his left hand amputated. Isaac, a KG2 pupil, is said to have defecated on the floor. Her stepmom, Ifwa Abedua, protested and, as a way of punishing him, attacked him with a machete. Isaac's left hand was eventually cut, but the stepmom refused to care for him. The hand started decomposing. Two good Samaritans saw him in a terrible state while he was accompanying his stepmom to the farm in his current condition.
You're still live on The Law on the Joy News channel. That report that we played a short while ago was brought to us by my colleagues, Erastus Asaridonko from the Ashanti region, and Richard Kojunyako also brought us a bit of that from the Central region, and Elias Utanko also telling us a piece of that story. I'm joined in the studio for today's discussion by Marian Darlington. She's a lawyer and advocate for women and children's rights. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I also have in the studio Ramana Sharif. She's a consultant, Rights of Children and Youth, World Future Council Foundation. Thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, I want to pick your initial thoughts on the videos that we saw. I want to start with you, Ramana.
As you see, it's so disheartening to think that a child could be beaten like this just because he word a bird. Bedwetting is part of child development. It's part of the upbringing of a child and should not result to such an abuse. This is clearly an abuse of the rights of the child and even the right of the child to develop, because it's part of the child's development. And you see, we've made it so normal that anyone can just beat a child and say it's discipline. This is corporal punishment that has nothing to do with discipline. And this is why we need to look at how do we implement sections of the child welfare policy of Ghana. It tackles most of these things. We need to look at it, we need to implement it, and we need to, Ghana has signed and rectified the African Charter on the Welfare of the Child. It has also rectified the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child. And in these two documents, it is criminal to beat a child like that. And so if we have rectified that, it means that it is criminal in this country. And so the law should work.
We'll get into the specifics shortly, but I mean, Marian, I don't know, you had indicated that you were not going to watch the video.
Yeah, so I said it was difficult to watch, and so I wasn't going to continue watching it. And it's disgusting to me, to be honest. And I believe that it's about time that individuals, no matter what status they have as parents, teachers, whatever, understand that such things cannot happen. She said it was corporal punishment, and we already have laws in Ghana regulating corporal punishment and actually criminalizing them, no matter where the child finds themselves. Unfortunately, our children are not protected as they should be, because it is up to us individuals and the country at large to protect our children from all forms of abuse, be it physical, mental, psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse. So no matter what, these things shouldn't happen. And I agree with Ramona when she says that the child is being prevented from development, because definitely you heard what the boy said. And how is he going to feel about it? Things that are supposed to be natural phenomenon of children when they are growing up is now what's causing him mental stress. His body is in pain. He's going to be afflicted for life. What is this boy going to grow up and think? How is he going to raise another child to think? So these are some of the things and the ripple effects of child abuse that we don't recognize. So if you want my initial comments, that's what I think. And that is why such things, I don't want to watch this, because for anybody who is free or who feels ready to inflict such pain, scars on their own children are not humans. You cannot be human. You've got to be an animal to treat your own child like this. But unfortunately for us, these are the people that we see in everyday life. They're the ones we work with. They're the ones we live with. They're the ones that are leading us in society. So how do we do this? So I'm glad that this is why we are having some of these discussions, so that people know better, so that people are able to treat children better.
I want to come to you, Raman. I mean, because of the work that you do and the space that you deal with, I mean, what we saw in the clips has to mainly do with the issues of corporal punishment or parents who are seeking, in whatever belief, to control or change certain actions of their child that they deem inappropriate. But in your space, what other forms of abuse do you tend to come across in terms of something that is happening a lot?
Okay, so the organization I work with is called World Future Council, and we work across the world. So we have country-specific issues. And when you talk about Ghana, the main issue that even when you look at the communication, the reporting of the country report of Ghana at the Africa Charter meeting, it's one of the key issues that were highlighted is corporal punishment, it's child marriage, it's child labor, and then the trocosi system. So corporal punishment, child labor, and child marriage are the main issues at the country level of Ghana. Okay. And because we have, as I said, we've normalized it. We think we are a disciplined society. I'm a Ghanaian. Even though I work across other countries, I'm always more attached to the issues in Ghana because I grew up here and I know how the abuses are so streamlined and so normalized that people don't even know that children have rights.
You're saying that if you pick something like child marriage and child labor, they are parts of the country where it is very, very normal and they see nothing wrong with it, or they are not aware of it being wrong.
They see nothing wrong with it, but Ghana has rectified, the age limit for marriage in Ghana is 18 years. And that is according to the CRC and the African Charter, as well as the Ghana Child Welfare Policy. And we have, especially in the north and other parts of Volta and other, you have children as young as 11, as young as 12 getting married. Their development hasn't reached the stage where they can give consent, where they can decide on issues such as marriage. So you have these abuses continuing because a child of 12 years hasn't developed to that stage mentally to know the effects of marriage, to know the consequences that come with marriage. And whilst the child is still developing, there is the possibility that she becomes pregnant. So she has the responsibility of taking care of another child. So a child taking care of another child. So you have this ripple effect of abuses, of trauma, of issues that needs to be handled. But by children who themselves need to be protected, to be guided, who themselves need to have the environment to develop fully.
Mm. And Marian, I mean, looking through some of the legislations that we have in place, I mean, for instance, if you look at the Children's Act, so Section 12 protects protection from exploitative labor. A person shall not subject a child to exploitative labor, which is prohibited. You go to Section 13, it says a person shall not subject a child to torture or any cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment, including a cultural practice which dehumanizes or is injurious to physical and mental well-being of a child. Then the two, very important, a correction of a child is not justifiable, which is unreasonable in kind or in degree according to the age, physical and mental condition of the child. 3 says, a correction of a child is not justifiable if the child by reason of tender age or otherwise is incapable of understanding the purpose of the correction. Then when you go to the 14, it talks about you not being able to force the child to be betrothed, to be subject of dowry transaction, or to be married. The minimum age of marriage of whatever kind, as Ramana indicated, is 18 years. And the child has the right to refuse the marriage, like I did indicate. It has some penalties to a person who contravenes a provision of sections 2 to 14, commits an offense, and is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding 250 penalty units or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 1 year, or both the fine and the imprisonment. This is good law, but I mean...
Joseph, let me say, first of all, let's streamline what constitutes abuse in children. I think it'll be easier for us to pick up the conversation from there. Okay. It is important for people to recognize and understand that any cruel or inhumane treatment and or violent treatment of a child constitutes abuse. Now, if you listen to what Ramona said, examples she gave of the various forms of abuse, the various examples of abuse that she listed, you would categorize them in two. You see that you'd find physical and sexual abuse in the examples that she gave. So, like she said, why is this so common for us in Ghana? I'm not saying this is to the exclusion of other countries in the world, but specifically to Ghana. Why is it so common that we have children being so cruelly handled physically, and it is normal for us? Or children going through various forms of cultural practices that are sexually abusive to them, and we see this to be normal? That is the conversation that we need to have. You've mentioned the Children's Act. It's a very good act, even though it's old. And I love it so much because it seeks to protect our children so well. First of all, we have the Constitution that protects children. And you'd recognize that when it comes to our constitution, the human rights are amazing. But when it comes to children, exceptions are made to the free will that a regular human being may have to decide that I want this, I don't want this. When it comes to children, it's not like that. When it comes to children, we look at what is the best interest of the child. So you see that the Children's Act specifically says, for instance, any human being has the right to decide what cultural practice they engage in. Children are not like that. It has to be in the best interest of the child. So from what you read, you see specifically that if it is to the detriment of the child, then it cannot happen. So for instance, as an adult, you can even decide, I'm sick, I don't want to go to the hospital. You can't do that to your child. You can't even impose your personal belief on your child, as long as it is not in their best interest. These are things that we need to educate people on. What the rights you have as an adult is not the same as the rights of the child. So you cannot decide that I don't do this, I have the right to not do it, and so I'm choosing it for my child. No, if it is not in their best interest, it is not acceptable. We have amazing laws to protect children in Ghana. So yes, the Children's Act is one. And now, because of the recent and the prevalent forms of sexual abuse, we have Cybersecurity Act also protecting children specifically. Because if we are addressing things like sexual violence, which we can give like wide range of examples, but now the cyberspace, the internet is not safe for our kids. So we needed to put in certain measures to protect them from what's going out there. Fortunately, our Criminal Offences Act also have certain acts that are made criminal, especially when it comes to children. We can talk about defilement, you can talk about unnatural carnal knowledge, we talk about sexual harassment and all of that. That is great. But we needed to do a little bit more to protect our children. Right now, we have parents exposing their kids to social media at quite young ages. So what are we doing as a nation to protect them against such? Because they are predators all over the internet. They are all over the internet.
In fact, a couple of days ago, not to cut you, just about 2 days ago, there's a photograph of the former president posted a photograph of the daughter. In fact, immediately I saw the picture, I was actually scared, even before I went to the comment section. And when I went there, my fear was confirmed. I mean, you have people, responsible people in society, making comments that I can imagine how the child, should the child even chance on those comments, how she will feel about it.
You see, even with this, I say to the people around me all the time, and sometimes when I'm training people, that when it comes to sexual harassment, comments are the #1 on my list when it comes to sexual harassment. Unfortunately, people do not recognize that what you are saying is violence, what you're saying is abusive to somebody, what you're saying is harassment, especially sexual harassment. People say, oh, but it was a joke, but this comment was said lightly. So even for adults, they have to go through this. How much less children? So yes, I'm not going to blame the former president for putting his child's picture out there. I think that we've come to a world that social media is great and the usage of it is in vogue. You're not actually going to stop anybody from posting what they want to post out there, as long as it's not harming the child. But you need to recognize that there are predators online. And so what are you doing to protect your child from saying? And in as much as is prevalent on us, as parents, as older people who post our younger people's pictures out there, we need to also educate people to know that you don't say this. You can't say this. It is not okay for you to look at a child's picture and make such comments. You can't do it even as a joke because it is not funny. If it's a joke to you, then there's something wrong with you. For you to see a young person's picture and say certain things about it tells a lot about you more than the child. This is a child that is innocent, needs protection from these kind of violence. It is up to us to make people aware that these things are criminal. The same way somebody who goes to defile a child can be arrested and prosecuted and possibly jailed for such acts, you can also go through the same process. It doesn't matter that your offense was not the actual sexual activity. Yours was what you said or typed on the internet. That is why we have these laws protecting children. So yes, we have laws, we have these things. Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, it's up to the police to actually look at these things and pursue them, prosecute the offenders.
Do you think that, I mean, maybe we are not seeing the prosecution on the scale in relation to the number of times we see such crimes being committed? That is what perhaps is accounting for the trend.
I think that as individuals, we do not take these things seriously. As much the people who are making the comments, as much as us that we feel offended, we don't take it seriously. We look at the comments and say, okay, it was a wrong comment, whatever, then we go to sleep. But if you were to report the person for the comment they made to the police, because it's a criminal offense, if you were to do that with such passion and energy and time as you would devote to if your child was sexually abused, like defilement, then we'll start taking these things seriously. Because if it happens to you or your child and you're not reporting it for prosecution to be done, what is the police going to do?
Ramana, you wanted to come in with a point, and I would like you to tie in with a bit of the social support system we have. I mean, a lot of the time you have instances where neighbors, so your neighbor, you realize that some abuse is going there, you want to go and report the matter, but when you go and report, what will happen to the child? It's the same father and mother or whoever is perpetrating the abuse who tends to be the provider for the child, because our social support system is virtually non-existent.
Okay, so
That's not fair.
it is. We have existing structures for that, but it's also the reporting. It is our part that we are not doing. The state is actually doing very, very well, and I will come to that. On the issue of online exploitation, the African Charter, the communication, they have a general communication 7, which was recently released, and it talks about online exploitation of African children. And it actually has now criminalizing sharenting, what they call sharenting. So if you're a parent and you think you can just go there, go online and start posting anything about your child, be careful, because you can't, it's becoming criminalized. Actually, it is if somebody takes you on and takes you to that level through the judicial system, you can be either fined or imprisoned for that. So it's all part of the mechanisms to protect children in Africa. So that's what I wanted to put across. On the issue of social support system.
I mean, because the stories that we get from a lot of our colleagues who have gone out there to do the stories and interact with people, a lot of the time, some of these individuals, they would have wished that there was a safe space where if you report the matter, for instance, the children could be moved in, they are catered for feeding, education-wise, so that they do not have to return to that space again.
So let me give you the structure of the system we have currently, which we are trying to strengthen it further. We have all the systems in place. The number one issue we have in this country, which was part of the recent stakeholders meeting of the National Child Protection Committee meeting, the number one issue that was raised there was reporting, low level of reporting of abuses. Because people, one, the family factor. A lot of people are not able to report abuses because the family has greater influence on people. So and if you look at it, most of these abuse cases of children happens within the family system. It happens, the perpetrators are people the children already know, the children confined in. So it is within the family system. And when caretakers or whoever the victim's guardian is wants to report, the family has so much influence that they don't want the person, they want to settle it within the family. But child abuse, don't forget, it's a criminal offense. So it is not a family matter. It's not a family issue. Wherever there is a case or an act of child abuse, it should immediately be reported. One thing we found out in our work is that there is a little bit of challenge in the chain of reporting. So when a case happens, a child is taken to a police station, the child has to report what happens. And then the police would have to issue maybe a medical form. At that point, sometimes there is a little bit of problem with even issuing of the medical form. So before they get the medical form to go to the hospital, the child has to narrate again what happened to the doctor. And then the doctor also demands a payment of some money before the child is examined. And in that chain, you could lose a lot of evidence. If you are lucky that you get examined and issued a medical form, you have to go back to the police. And then there is a lot of narrations. Throughout this, the child is re-traumatized. So you traumatize the child right from where the abuse started throughout the chain of reporting. And sometimes people stop, they halt the reporting after the police station because they have to go to the police, medical officer come back, the back and forth. It's also what is the right word? It deters. It deters people from wanting to go through. So the child welfare policy states that this reporting system should be made easier and child friendly. It is in the policy. So how do we make it easier and child friendly? That's where the one-stop center model of child protection comes in. What is that? It does is that all these services that a child needs immediately an abuse case is reported. You find it all of them in one place. So it's in one center. Okay. You report an abuse case immediately. Ideally, it should be situated in a hospital. So once you walk in, and that is also because of the child-friendly nature of it, you walk into the hospital seeking medical care for a child that has been abused. Immediately, you are transferred. The nurse on duty knows your special case and then takes you to the center, which is within the hospital. There, you meet a medical officer, you meet a police officer, you meet a psychosocial person, you meet a legal person. So all of them are working together. In a very child-friendly manner, they retrieve all information they need. Forensic evidence is retrieved, whatever information, everyone takes the part that he or she needs. And the child is received in a manner that is so calming, in a place that he or she feels comfortable to narrate the incident for once. And then with people who are really trained to understand the psychology of children and how to engage them in a way that they can give information without going through trauma. And then there is a psychosocial person there who will support the child throughout the process. So you are solving all the issues of the reporting, all the problems that revolves around the reporting system. And ideally, it should be in a hospital. Because you know how our perception about police, it's like if you're going to the police, it means you are reporting somebody. People don't think of your needs. They only think of their perception of, oh, she's reporting me or he's reporting me to be arrested. Yeah. But if you walk into a hospital, no one will think that you're going to report anyone. You're going to seek medical care for a child who has been abused. And in that instance, everything is taken. So you're able to get justice for that child.
Mm. And Marion, I mean, you had some points you wanted to put across.
Yes, so I wanted to mention that when it comes to protecting our children, and especially with the things we've mentioned, there's one problem when it comes to child abuse, especially sexual abuse, that we haven't looked at, especially when she spoke about child marriage. Okay. Is the one factor that we have noticed in recent times is that the children themselves want to get married at that early age because they have seen their friends do it. Mm-hmm. they think that there's some prestige in doing it. And so they feel that they need to also get married at that early age. So one of the protection methods that I have found is to protect the children against themselves. Because you need to tell that young girl that that is wrong. If she does not understand why this is wrong, she doesn't understand why you are telling her not to get married. Because her friend got married, she's married to a wealthy man, she has a nice house, she has whatever, she's in luxury. Why are you telling me not to do the same? But if we are supposed to protect these children, we need to protect them also against themselves. They need to understand why that is wrong. They need to understand that you might see this on the cover, but underneath it is what it looks like. And that is the reality that you are probably going to face. And that is why it is wrong for you to engage in that. So that's the first thing I wanted to add. The second thing is, when we are dealing with children, whether it's in our homes, it's in the police station, it's in the hospital, it's in our schools, wherever, that kids or children are going to be dealt with, we need child protection policies. We don't have that in a lot of institutions in Ghana. I've had the privilege of doing it for some institutions. And you'd ask, what is it, and then why do we need it? It is a policy that every institution should have that tells you how to deal with the children. It tells you the human interrelations, what it should look like, what is permitted, what is not permitted. As long as they're going to be children, and then there are male adults, there are female children, and they're going to be working together, what should that relationship look like? Where do you draw the line? If there's abuse, how do we go about it? This policy outlines all these things. Does the child understand what abuse looks like? How they can report it? Do they feel free? Do they feel not judged? Do they feel safe in coming to somebody? Do they know who to go to? Do they feel safe in going to that person to say, look, this thing happened to me and I feel like I need to tell someone about it? And then what is the chain of the reports? Every institution needs this. And everybody who works in an institution where children are interacted with needs to understand and know what to do. Because it will be very traumatic on the child's part that they walk to you, Joseph, and say, Mr. A or Miss B touched me in this place or said this to me, and you, Joseph, would not know what to do. So every institution needs to know. If any child comes to you to say A, B, C, what do you do? Where do you go? And how do you protect the child from further abuse? Even as parents at home, we find that the children can go to their parents or guardians to say, this person, usually is family or closely family knit people, said this to me, touched me in this way, texted this to me, because social media, our children are exposed. And then you find that, how do they protect the children? Instead of them making sure that they have blocked or cut off any form of interaction between the child and then the abuser, you find that they want to do, let's talk about it, oh, he's been warned, he's not going to do it again. And then they put the child right back in that same space with the abuser. What do you think is going to happen to the child? Even if the abuser doesn't repeat his actions, how do you think this child is going to go being psychologically traumatized?
If you're not even careful, they can even threaten the child.
That's what I'm saying. Even if the abuse doesn't continue, which is very unlikely, but assuming that is it, the child is going to go around with the psychological trauma of wondering, what if this is something I'm already scared with and I have to deal with this person, so they're already on edge all the time. You can't have children with mental torture. How do you raise children like that? So that is why every institution, whether at home, in school, whatever, they need a policy. I did a training in a school, I give this example all the time, where my audience were children between the ages of 9 and 15. The youngest child I had was 9. And the oldest was 15. There were about 400 and something kids. And I decided to do a survey. And I said, anonymously, put it on paper, how many of you have been abused and by whom? Don't put out your name. Just say if you've been abused and then by whom. And then after gathering the answers, 93% of the total number had been abused. Out of the 93% that had been abused, 90% were from family. So you had, my father abused me. And these are both boys and girls. My father, my grandfather, my mother's boyfriend, my cousin, my brother, my aunt. It was family. And so when you hear on the news, you guys know best that a father sexually or physically abused their child as little as 3 months and as old as whatever. It's not surprising to me. It might sound strange to somebody, but this is something I have to deal with on a daily basis. This is something that I have to hear from kids on a daily basis. Imagine the trauma of having to stay in the same house with your abuser. And then as part of our work, we've had instances where the kids keep getting pregnant. The pregnancy keeps getting aborted by the family because it is, according to them, it is too shameful. Disgrace. Yeah. It's a disgrace to come and name and shame. Why are fathers sexually abusing their children? I don't even understand that. And instead of stopping, putting an end to cutting them off, you're rather protecting the identity and saying, oh, you know, he's a popular person, or he's a leader, it's going to affect his job. Why do you want to get him arrested?
He didn't think about all those things.
Oh, and then they start asking things like, is the wife depriving him sex? Like, I can't even understand some of the questions that you have to. Yeah. So then that's another thing. Okay. And then let me add one last thing.
Okay.
I want to say that our community, the community-based society, anytime I hear society, I keep telling people, is you and I. So the community society is encouraging abuse. This is not even limited to sexual abuse. This is also with physical abuse. Because in as much as GS has a policy prohibiting corporal punishment, I'm a lawyer, so I've had to deal with some of these things. You find that the teachers who are still engaging in it, who are being reported for the corporal punishment, like one particular case that we had, the school was reported for, the teacher beat up the 9-year-old girl so mercilessly, she couldn't even sit down for a month.
Wow.
What was the offense? She's a Nigerian girl, and she was given a tree homework, and she couldn't do it because her parents are Nigerian. They live in Ghana, they're schooling in Ghana. And the teacher had to beat her so mercilessly. You should see, she couldn't sit down for a month. Now, the school was reported, definitely this is a human rights issue, we had to deal with it. And guess what the school did? They went and called a PTA meeting and asked the parents, should we abolish corporal punishment in school or not? First, that is even wrong. This is a criminal offense.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We have strict laws and policies against specifically prohibiting corporal punishment. So it's not even a discretional issue.
It's not something that should be having a discussion.
You don't even have a discussion on this. And guess what? The parents said, no, don't abolish it. That is what is training our kids. The parents said the school should continue beating their children.
Which is very unfortunate.
Very, very unfortunate. And it is even at the highest level. In this country, I have interacted with a lot of people in the highest of places. And people seem to think that it's normal to beat a child. And I try to explain to them that, look, there are several ways of raising a child. Beating is not one of it.
Yeah.
You have several ways of disciplining a child. And beating is not one of it. If beating was, all the children in other parts of the world, developed world that we want to also trying to develop, would have been spoiled kids. Would have, like, they wouldn't reach anywhere in the world, in life.
And I mean, the point we made from the earlier law we read under the Children's Act is that, I mean, even if you are correcting a child and the child is not even capable of understanding, because sometimes you see a little child and someone is beating up the child. This is a child that cannot clearly understand what it is you're trying to tell them about. And so, I mean, you're still live on the Joy News channel. The law Today, the discussion we are having, we are trying to find justice for abused children, and so far we've looked at some of the laws that provide protection for children and the instance of the abuse. We've been hearing from the perspective of a lawyer, as well as Ramana, who also works in that space. You can join the discussion via the Zoom ID details that you can see on your screen. The passcode is also indicated there, so you can join via phone as well if you have some questions that you would want to ask. Ramana, just one point, this issue of child exploitation, using child for children, there are those who sometimes make the case that our context is a bit different. I mean, we all are supposed to help our parents in their trade sometimes, even though Marian will agree that clearly the law does not allow some of those things that are taking place.
No, it does actually. If you look at the Ghana child welfare policy, and then also the African Charter, that's where I always, whenever I meet or I train, I tell African countries that look, use the African Charter because it's very specific to the African system. It came after the CRC, which is the UN for everyone, but it lacked some specific issues with regards to maybe our culture and our tradition. So those were inculcated in the African Charter. So it even has an article on the responsibility of a child. The CRC doesn't talk about the responsibility of a child, but the African Charter does, because in African setting, we think a child also should be responsible. So
Our Children's Act does the same.
So yeah, so it is there. One thing
except that if you look at the Children's Act, if you go to Section 87, for instance, it talks about a person shall not engage a child in exploitative labor. Labor is exploitative of a child if it deprives the child of its health, education or development. And so we see there are instances where the time children are supposed to go to school, they're on the lake.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So what Ramona was, if you had allowed her to finish, what she was going to say was that the African Charter recognizes that as Africans, our children have to do some work to help us.
Yeah.
Yes. And the Children's Act allows that. The exception is when it is exploitative. What is it depriving the child of? Exactly. The child's supposed to be in school. You say the child should work. Like these, so some of these things. So I'm sure that's where she was going. Yes. Yeah. So you have, like I said earlier, we have perfect laws. Yeah. The problem is, do we know?
Do we know?
If we do, what are we doing with it?
Exactly. That's where we need a lot of education. I always say we need a lot of education on the rights of the child. We don't, some people don't, if you talk, you'll be surprised that someone asks me, does a child has a right? Like the fact that you gave birth to that child doesn't mean the child doesn't have a right. You don't own that child. And we need to also know to deal with children according to their evolving capacity. That is the word in both the CRC and the African Charter, and even in our own laws. Yeah. You need to always be mindful of at what capacity, thinking capacity, mental capacity, psychological capacity is the child. It comes with the age. Yeah.
And just as what you're saying, that you might have a 9-year-old who is thinking above the regular standard expected of a 9-year-old. You cannot treat that person as a 9-year-old when it comes to thoughts. So that's what she's saying. If you have a child that you think this is a child should be acting this, but it's acting above it, you need to start going and meeting up with their mental capacity, their thought capacity, their actions. Meet up with it. Don't say, oh, my time, this was not happening. If you were this age, you can't have access to this. But this person is obviously ready for such a thing. You need to meet up with it. So, and also let me add that when I said protect the children against themselves, it is possible for 2 children to commit a crime. We need to be ready to have that discussion. And this is happening. Unfortunately, parents, you find that parents cover it up, especially with sexual abuse. Everybody know, we should know that the age for consensual sex when it comes to is 16. 16, okay. When it comes to kids is 16. However, you find 2 minors who are below 16 having sexual activity. Now, this is criminal on both their parts. But we need to have these conversations. We need to recognize that it is possible for my 15-year-old son to go and have sex with a minor, I need to do something about it. We shouldn't just have the discussion as though when it comes to sexual abuse or sexual violence, it is only an adult and a minor. No, it is possible for two minors to engage in such activities.
And that's where the juvenile justice law comes in. So in that instance, you don't use the law punishing
an adult for a child.
So you need to refer to the juvenile
Even
justice.
in terms of the prosecution and everything, it goes through a separate process entirely.
Yes, because at the end of the day, we recognize that there are children that need to be protected. Protected from all forms of, that's a child. So they still need to be protected from cruel treatments, from inhumane treatments. And you know that when you mix them with adults, they'll be treated as one. And you cannot protect them really from what the other adults might be facing.
And also there is one thing that I need to raise here. Children have agency and they have voice. And we need to now start to learn, because in the society we think that a child has no voice. But even a fresh born has a voice. If the child doesn't want to take breast milk, you have no right to force the child. If it's only maybe a doctor who can say, if the child doesn't drink water or something, the child would die, and would have other ways of. But you see, we have in our society where even a fresh baby, I have a case that a child was, the nose was, closed to feed the child, and the child died. How can you be so cruel? How can you be so cruel? You think the child has no voice? When the child is crying, that is the voice that the child is telling you, I don't want it, and you need to stop. If somebody picks this up through the justice system, you should be in prison.
Okay, we have some calls coming in already. Noah joins us from Tafo. Noah, welcome to the show. Hello, Noah.
Hello.
Yes, we are listening to you, Noah.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Noah.
Yeah, this is Adam. My point is that I want to know the stance of the law when children abuse children.
When children abuse children, I think Marian touched on it a short while ago. I guess you can just restate for.
Yeah, so, well, we recognize that children are capable of committing criminal offenses, and in Ghana, the age for criminal liability is 12 years. So as long as you're 12 years and above, you're capable of committing a criminal offense. And if you commit a criminal offense, there's punishment, recommended punishment for it. The only thing is that we recognize that as children, you still need protection. You cannot be treated as an adult. So then you go through a different process, but you still be punished for whatever criminal offense that you have engaged in.
Okay, so Noah, Adams from Bolga, that's your answer that you have there. Ramon, I just want to come to you just in making progress on how we deal with this particular issue going forward. I mean, first, I would want you to touch on the role of parents. What role can parents play in this? Then I'll come to Marian so that you explain to us about what steps one must take if you are aware of abuse, either in the home, in your community, whatever you can do. Ramana.
So parents, by all the laws and mechanisms that we have, are the caretakers of children, and the laws always prioritize parent until it can be established that a parent is not capable. Then the child is taken to alternative care. Okay. So the law gives parents a lot of leverage, that the child is with you because you brought the child to the world, but you have a lot of responsibilities. Okay. And the responsibilities that not include you abusing the child. Okay. If there is, if you have issues with how to parent the child well, there are a lot of help, a lot of, even when you go to DOFSU in Ghana, you can get support to be able to deal with maybe problem solving, maybe a child who doesn't listen, maybe a child who, any problem at all you have with a child.
All those things can be attended to.
It can be attended to.
Let me quickly hear from Derek from Medina. Derek, if you are there, good afternoon. Hello, Derek.
My contribution is yeah, I can hear you. My contribution is
Go ahead, Eric.
The law can't work without solutions. Before you punish someone for abusing a child, there should be a solution that will take care of the child after the abuse, because you cannot punish a parent for abusing a child and then giving the child to the parent to take care of the child again. There should be a foster care that will take the child from the parent and then take care of the child. And then the government must supposed to pay the foster home that will take care of the child.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can't punish the parent and then you leave the child for the parent to take care of again.
Okay.
The parent will now, they can even kill the child, cry. So there should be some kind of, I don't know, mechanism or anything, any system that will work towards that direction.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. We also have Michael joining us from East Legon. Michael, what do you have to say?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Hello.
Hello, Michael. I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, so let's start with Daniel on Zoom. Daniel, you can unmute your device and go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Daniel.
All right. What I want to say is that it's good that we are educating, or your firm is educating the public concerning this particular issue of child abuse. And, if the way the panelists are saying it, if you have a smart child who can know how to play around his or her well, he or she can put teachers or any other guardian into a problem, a big time one, because they can frame up things, because they know how they are going to go about it. They know how to put people into trouble. So I heard them talking about the issue of corporal punishment in schools. Now, we should not forget that we are a country and all of us have cultures. And our constitution also have it based from the culture in which we find, or the jurisdiction in which we find ourselves in. So we shouldn't forget about the cultural aspect of what our people think it is right, and only be talking about the constitution. Because when we say the constitution, what we are going to do is that we are going to forget about our cultural values that have raised you and I to be here today. And where we going tomorrow will be something that will be very catastrophic to
thank you very much.
Our community.
Do I have Eric on Zoom as well? You can unmute and talk to us as well, Eric. Hello, Eric, go ahead. Hello, Eric.
Yeah, Joseph, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
I have two main issues to address. First of all, it's about the level of proactiveness as a country. You would recall that you have mentioned a lot of laws, and we have a lot of policies in place. But the agencies to ensure that these laws and policies are working are not very proactive enough. For example, it fits into the second point I wanted to make, because we are a country where we don't know how to give feedback and incorporate feedback. And this is a direct response from how we treat our children from the early stages. So they don't know how to give feedback, and they don't know how to incorporate feedback correctly. So we grow up not valuing feedback or not even giving feedback. And so this program is very nice, and I applaud multimedia for putting this up. But the state institutions and other organizations that are in charge of children welfare should be very proactive. We do not have to engage in firefighting, but we need to put systems in place such that we can pick up these abuses and deal with them, and not wait for complaints to be made.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. I'll come to Mari and then Ramana next one.
Okay, so I just wanted to quickly respond to the previous speaker who said, or contributor who said that if you had a child that was smart, because the children coming up are smart, they can easily put somebody in trouble by falsely accusing them. I don't know if you share, if you heard it with me, but we like to victim blame too much, to the extent that you'd rather have a dumb child than a child that is smart. Because if my child is smart, like you're saying that she is, and she tells me, Mom, this teacher did this to me, I know she's smart. I know she knows what she's saying, and I'm believing her first. I don't know why we like to disbelieve victims when they say something. It's like our first response is, let's not believe them. They are making things up. They are falsely accusing the person. To the extent that a child is saying something and your response is that this child is a smart child, she's making things up to put someone in trouble. No.
And the point really is that there's still a process that all of that will go through. It's not a case that, because in seeking to protect children, the other rights are not thrown away.
Yes,
be a due process.
Totally. And so these things come together. Like I said, when it comes to the rights that adults have as compared to children is too sensitive. So the space you'd give to an adult, you cannot give the same space to a child. So if a child tells you, this thing happened to me, the measures are shorter and quicker than when it comes to an adult. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is, I don't know if it was the same person or an earlier speaker that said that the Constitution and stuff should recognize that we have culture and so don't throw away our culture because you end up raising kids that are not disciplined. Let's understand that, first of all, for you to say a child has been abused, whatever thing it is, whether it is the cultural practice, it is the disciplinary method you're using, is cruel. It is important for you to understand that it is cruel, it is inhumane, it is violent, and it is not in the best interest of the child. So if whatever it is that you want to take that child through has any of these things that I have mentioned, it is not good. It's abusive to the child. It doesn't matter what the cultural practice is. And I mentioned earlier that as adults, we have the right to engage in whatever cultural practice of our choosing. But the child doesn't have the same rights. The child needs, whatever it is, should be protected from any cruel treatment. So if your cultural practice is to hit a child, even if the child is not yours, if you see the child walking by the streets and you feel this child is behaving wrongly, I'm going to discipline him, and you start beating up the child, it is cruel to the child, it's cruel to the child.
It's not in the interest of the child.
This is not in the best interest of the child.
Ramana, we are out of time, just 30 seconds, then we wrap up.
So he said something like our culture. What is our culture? Is it the violence? Is it what we watched when we started? Is that our culture?
Definitely not.
Are we this cruel? We are not. So if a child that goes through this comes to report and you think that the child is making problem for you, are you not the one who is making problem for yourself?
Yeah.
You hit a child. That is problem. If you don't want problem, don't hit the child.
Yeah.
And then it's as simple as that. And we need to learn to know that, as I said, children have agency. They have voice. And they have rights.
Okay.
And we need to give them that. They are not, it's not like binary thing, adulthood and childhood. No.
It's just one thing, and we just have to find.
And we need to respect each other.
Protect children. I mean, that is all time will allow us for today. It's been a riveting discussion. My guests have been Marian Darlington. She's a lawyer and advocate for women and children's rights. Also joined by Ramana Sharif as well. She works within the space of protecting children. My name is Joseph Akable. Many thanks to all who joined us via Zoom and on the phone lines. Do join us same time next week.